Most people can barely even imagine what it would be like to live life without the gift of sight. It is, for most of us, the main lens through which we perceive and navigate the world. But sight isn't a gift that everyone has, and those who are born or become blind find other ways to navigate the world. The same is true for the species we'll be talking about today, the Miraluka. These near-humans were not only born blind, but born without eyes altogether, because they didn't need them. That's because the Miraluka had a unique sense that rendered conventional sight obsolete. They could see through the Force. In this video, we'll be taking a close look at this species and some of its more notable members.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
The original homeworld of the Miraluka is unknown, but it was rendered uninhabitable due to geochemical instability that caused its atmosphere to disperse, forcing them to relocate to a new homeworld in around 7000 BBY. They ultimately settled on Narrators, a planet in the fast east sector of the expansion region. Their new homeworld was located on the edge of the Veil, a molecular cluster that made hyperspace travel in the region difficult, and it was far from any major trade routes, leaving the Miraluka isolated from the galaxy. Narrators' son, Arbor, was a red dwarf that primarily emitted infrared light, and as a result, the Miraluka lost the ability to see visible light over the next few thousand years. Indeed, they lost their eyes altogether, though they retained vestigial sockets in their skulls. On Narrators, the Miraluka established an agrarian society spread out all over the planet. They had very little industry, which provided them with farming equipment, repulsive transport, and computers, and only a handful of population centers, with most Miraluka living in rural communities. Even by the time of the Great Sith War, 3,000 years after the first Miraluka settlement, the whole planet only had a population of 1 million. Narrators was ruled by a council of 23 representatives, one from each of the planet's provinces, though the Miraluka state didn't do all that much, as Narrators was a peaceful and generally uneventful world. The Miraluka were typically deliberative and cautious. They cared little for wealth or power, and they were rather collectivist, seeing all Miraluka as family and doing their best to act in the interest of the greater good. Most Miraluka were content to spend their lives just vibing on Narrators, but some younger Miraluka were more adventurous and travelled off-world to tour the galaxy. Those who did quickly learned that baseline humans found their eyelessness off-putting, so the Mira looked to wearing bands or veils where their eyes would be. The Miraluka also established a single colony world, Katarr, in the mid-rims of Ensori's sector, where some of the more ambitious Miraluka settled. Katarr was less isolated, though it was still obscure, and it maintained relations with the Republic. Narrators itself, however, remained mostly isolated. That changed with the advent of the Great Sith War, during which the Mandalorian Crusaders invaded the planet and had to be driven off by the Jedi. During the battle, the Jedi became better acquainted with the Miraluka, and they discovered that all members of the species had strong connections to the Force. After the war, the Jedi established a small satellite academy on Narrators and began training the stronger Miraluka as Jedi. Let's hold that train of thought for now and talk about Force sight. The Miraluka were, for the most part, identical to baseline humans in all but two respects: their lack of eyes and their stronger than average connections to the Force. These two traits were actually related to each other, as it was through the Force that the Miraluka saw the world. As they lost their conventional sight after their settlement on Narrators, they started to develop a greater natural affinity to the Force, which granted them the ability of Force sight. This was an ability that Force sensitives of other species could use, though it took considerable training for even gifted Jedi to master Force sight. By the time of the Great Sith War, however, Miraluka were gifted with Force sight from birth, and while Jedi had to concentrate to maintain Force sight for extended periods of time, most Miraluka lived their whole lives seeing the universe in this way. Force sight was not a simple replacement for conventional sight. It didn't allow the Miraluka to see normally through the Force, but rather, it allowed them to see the Force itself. They could see the Force auras of all other living beings, with beings being more visible the stronger they were in the Force. Those who were especially strong in the Force seemed to glow brightly to the Miraluka, while the shapes of non-living things were faint and hazy. As a side effect of this constant Force sight, Miraluka with particular strength in the Force were especially adept at Force precognition, which relied on the same basic perceptions. This gave the Miraluka a unique perspective on the universe. While even most Jedi had to reach out to sense the bonds the Force forged between all living things, they were an accepted fact of life to the Miraluka, who saw the world through them. To the Miraluka, the very concepts of beauty, life, and everything that was worthwhile were defined in terms of the Force and the interconnection it entailed. To an extent, this alienated them from members of other species who didn't see the world in the same way and were often ignorant of their connection to everyone else around them. The Miraluka found this sort of ignorance to be horrifying, disgusting even. This was to such an extent that when Darth Nihilus forced Visas Ma to see the universe in this way, even though it was just for a moment, it destroyed her will to live.
He made me see, and for the first time I saw the galaxy, and I wished to die. To this galaxy, my world, absent the currents and spectrums of the Force, was nothing but crude matter, rock, flesh, emptiness. He showed the flickering of life on other planets, the mass of beings that swarm through the empty places of the galaxy. To see such creatures, disconnected from themselves, their world, their place in it, unable to see the currents and how they affected everything around them.
To the Miraluka, it was everyone else in the galaxy that was blind, and theirs was a blindness far worse than the lack of conventional sight. It was because of this that they became close friends with the Jedi Order once the two became acquainted. Despite having conventional sight, the Jedi saw the universe in the same way as the Miraluka, and it was a breath of fresh air to those horrified by the ignorance of other sentient beings. Many Miraluka joined the Jedi Order over the years, and many of them became powerful seers gifted with precognition and prophecy. The friendship with the Jedi Order ultimately brought tragedy to the Miraluka. During the Dark Wars, as Darth Nihilus and the Sith Triumvirate fought from the shadows to wipe out the Order, what remained of the Jedi were in a conclave on Katarr, hoping that being among the Miraluka would help them see the threat that was destroying them. They succeeded, in a sense. The gathering of so many Force sensitives on Katarr called out like a beacon to Darth Nihilus, who came and cleansed the entire planet of life, consuming the Jedi, the Miraluka, and all else on the colony. Only one living being survived on the entire planet, Visas Ma, who was badly traumatized by the experience of everything else dying around her, fading from her sight and leaving her truly blind. Nihilus took Visas as his Sith apprentice after the death of Katarr, though in truth, she was more like a slave than an apprentice. Ultimately, she defected to join Mitra Surik, the Jedi exile, who helped her kill Nihilus and find some semblance of healing. After the Dark Wars, the Jedi Order recovered and the Miraluka continued to be close allies of the Jedi. Huge numbers of Miraluka joined the Order over the years, and many of them who weren't strong enough in the Force to become full-fledged Jedi worked for the Order as teachers or administrators. The Miraluka also had their own order of Force sensitives, the Luca Sene, somewhat like the Keldor. Unlike with the Jedi Order, membership in the Luca Sene wasn't a full-time job. The group was mostly academic in nature, and its members had day jobs in all walks of Miralukan life. The Luca Sene were firm lightsiders and close friends of the Jedi Order, and some Miraluka Jedi were members of the Luca Sene as well. The Luca Sene and the Miraluka as a people did have some ideas that slightly differed from those of the Jedi, however. The Miraluka understood the Force through the lens of two gods, Ashla and Bogan, much as the very early Jedi had. They also didn't believe in good or evil, though they nonetheless firmly rejected the dark side. As you might expect, the Miraluka fared poorly during the rise of the Empire and Great Jedi Purge. Thousands of Miraluka, both Jedi and non-Jedi, were killed in the Purge, and the Empire persecuted the Miraluka for their people's friendship with the Jedi. A few Miraluka were pressured into joining the Empire as spies, and one notable Miraluka Jedi, the former Jedi archivist Jarek, became a High Inquisitor of the Empire. For the most part, however, the Miraluka refused to serve the Empire, and many joined the Alliance to restore the Republic. So that's the story of the fascinating Miraluka, one of the coolest near-human species, in our opinion. But what do you think? What do you rate them on a scale of 1 to 10? Are there any other species you'd like us to cover in the future? Let us know in the comments section below, and as always guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you in the next video.